Okay.
Can't argue that.
They can't argue that.
Can't argue.
Okay, we are
Man of
live.
few words. That's good.
Okay, guys, we're live.
All right.
Thanks for joining us today for MasterCoaches Wednesday Weekly Buzz and our after show Buzz Reaction. I'm Ruth Nelson, joined by Hall of Famers Mick Haley, Bob Bertucci, and Brian Gimolero, bringing you the most current issues and trends in volleyball. If you are viewing for the first time, you'll have a chance to listen to leaders in our sport provide their perspective on questions that are asked, along with a discussion on topics that are current and ones that are affecting all of us during this challenging time. Our Buzz Reaction after show now features guests that have been selected from our Sign Up to Be a Guest program. Be sure to listen to the details at the end of the show on how to get on our guest list. Our news flash today: name, image, likeness continues to be a hot topic as states begin to pass their laws for NIL usage early as this summer. Be sure to Google Sportico, S-P-O-R-T-I-C-O, as they discuss College Athlete Economic Freedom Act being introduced by Senator Murphy and former Georgetown volleyball player, Senator Lori Trahan. Today, our guest will provide us insight into how the NCAA Volleyball Championship Committee is addressing the format for the 2021 Division I Women's Volleyball Championship being held in Omaha in April, and provide us much needed clarity on what conferences are playing and protocols being used. Now let's head over to Austin, Texas, where former Olympic coach Mick Haley will be introducing our special guest today. Mick?
Thank you, Ruth. Another great guest today. We have TJ Meagher, member of the NCAA Division I Women's Volleyball Committee. Welcome, TJ, and thank you for agreeing to be on the show. It's really fun having you on.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be with you four. So thank you for having me.
Well, no reason not to move fast. Got some great questions, and everybody is loaded up here. But I have to ask you this one before we get into the business. How do you get on the Women's Volleyball Committee, and how long have you been on this committee?
Well, Mick, it's an honor to be able to serve the membership and something you feel passionate about. And honestly, I feel that I was very fortunate to be selected to represent the American Athletics Conference. If you guys aren't aware, the American Athletics Conference just went into existence several years ago, and each conference has an opportunity to put a member up for a nomination to be on the committee. And since the American didn't exist, it provided a unique pathway for me to be involved, but I had to go through a nomination process through the conference, and they put me forward, and then the NCAA selected me based on my history of being involved in the sport of volleyball, from my time as a coach, from my time serving the membership of the American Volleyball Coaches Association. They thought I could bring some value. So this is my fourth and final year, and I'm actually serving as chair this year in such a remarkably unforgettable time.
Well, I certainly remember when I was on that committee, and it is an unforgettable time. That's for sure. A lot of hard decisions. So that's, I think, very nice that people would put you up for the committee. You certainly have done a heck of a job. So we're going to jump right into this, and I'm going to give you just a whole full swing at this one. Tell us everything you know about the tournament for this spring, Division I Women's Volleyball Championship. And I'm just going to let you run with it, and then we're going to fill in the gaps here.
Well, as succinctly as I can explain this, the NCAA determined that women's Division I volleyball would play their 2020 championship in April of 2021. And they did that with all the all the fall sports that were to have awarded a championship a few months ago. But to give us an opportunity to play, knowing the impact of COVID-19 and the challenges it was presenting for logistic opportunities, they decided to move the season to the spring, which is unique because, as you guys know, usually the spring is when you're playing for your 4 dates, and you're trying to make it a time to build skills and improve your student athletes. And now this is the countable season, and the championship will be awarded in April. So the modifications specifically were a reduction in field. Normally the tournament is 64 teams, and this year there'll be 48. And you guys would all probably know this, but I think you have to go back to 1998 since the last time the NCAA Division I Women's Championship had 48 teams represented. So 48 teams, there's 32 conferences, 30 of which are playing this fall. 2 decided to opt out. That was the Ivy League, and I believe it's the Big West. Those 2 leagues decided that their fall sports would not play this spring. That means we'll be 30 automatic qualifying bids will be issued by the conferences that are determining their champion. And that leaves us with 18 at-large bids that will be awarded through normal committee process in a very abnormal kind of year.
Okay. Okay.
Wow.
That opens it up. Bob, are you ready?
Yeah, I think I'm ready because TJ, you actually helped a little bit right from the start because we knew there was 32 conferences, but we had heard that some of the conferences weren't playing. So now with 30 teams, we were kind of playing with this the other day. If there was 32 and 16, then maybe you'd play, all the 30, you have 16 buys and then you'd play the 32. But now with 30, how's it going to work?
Well, there'll be 30 automatic qualifying bids awarded by the conferences, and then we'll increase, instead of 16 at-larges, it'll be 18 at-larges. So the field is still 48. We just have 2 more at-large bids to replace the 2 leagues that aren't awarding a championship this spring. Therefore, it's still a 48-team field. The format will be 16 matches played on day 1, and then 16 teams will receive a bye that will then play on day 2 against the 16 teams that went on day 1.
Okay, and it's all going to be out in Omaha, and will it be all run on the same weekend or that same week?
Well, we're still working with the schedule. We had some preliminary ideas of how we thought it might be able to go. And keep in mind, if we're all in one location, there's some real core pieces to this that make sense. Clearly, we do not want student athletes, coaches, or teams who have earned the right to participate not actually be able to play due to a COVID-19 episode. That we feel like would be very unfortunate for the overall event. So having all the teams in one location minimize the exposure. It's the same rationale they brought to determine why the NCAA men's basketball and women's basketball tournaments would be conducted in one city. Therefore, we'll reduce that possibility. So having all the teams in one site gives us some flexibility. It allows the travel impact to be reduced. So there's not as much wear and tear on the student athletes traveling between the weekends that they would have been playing had this been conducted normally. And we're trying to see how far we can work that to give, one, our student athletes plenty of time to recover and be available for the next line of competition, and 2, television exposure. They've taken a keen interest into this, and with having the teams on one side, we can really do some things with the schedule that might give them some exposure that we haven't had in previous championship years.
Okay.
So are we looking at a whole week that they're going to actually be in that site and be out of class, which might only be the same as somebody moving all the way through the tournament anyway.
Right. Well, think about it this way. Normally it takes 3 weekends to conduct a 64 team tournament. We think we can get this into just over 2 weeks. Again, still working through the schedule with TV, with the local organizing committee in Omaha. But ideally, for a 64 team tournament, you need 3 weekends, and that would be an extensive amount of time to keep people out of class, even though I don't think there's a whole lot of students that are in class these days. Everything seems to be virtual. But we clearly see some opportunities to make this tournament delivery really feasible for the teams participating, so that the ones that will make it to the finals, clearly they're going to be in Omaha for quite some time. But those that are coming and maybe not as have a fortunate a run, they won't be in Omaha as long.
How about the hotels? I mean, are you able to have enough hotels to house everybody? Are you picking one hotel where everybody's going to be housed so you can, kind of quarantine them in one location?
Well, I don't think one hotel would be accommodating for all the teams, especially for the first 2 rounds. It's when you've got all the teams playing. So they have been working with the local organizing committee to identify the teams, how they would be organized, to make sure that we have acceptable accommodations. And keep in mind the testing component of this will be extraordinary to keep everybody as safe as possible and reduce any amount of exposure. So fortunately, we do think that the hotel setup will work in our favor in Omaha. They are absolutely eager to host this event in its entirety. So we are feeling like this is going to work in our favor to be in one site like this.
Now, are you going to be playing everybody in the arena, or is it going to be some teams in the arena, some teams in the convention center with sport court and other setups?
Well, the court setup, I would tell you the key things in this, once you get past the testing and safety components of it, is the sequencing of the days of play and the court setup. Myself and Michelle Durbin, who was last year's committee chair, and Kristen Fossbender, who's director of operations and liaison to the committee for the NCAA. We've been communicating with the head coaches committee almost on a weekly basis since last summer to keep them apprised of information as we were aware. And we're very sensitized to what are core issues in delivering this tournament to be as special as it should be to decide the champion for all of Division I women's volleyball. So we're looking very closely at how we can organize the courts, how we can set this up in the convention center. We will need access to something beyond the arena, but we're looking at how much we will need the convention center for, how it will be organized to provide some level of guest or pass list accessibility, how we can provide online streaming to make sure that all fans will have an access to see the teams play, and honestly, to coordinate what is a major undertaking in just over 2 months. So we've got a ton of work to do, but we're very energized and we have a great group to work through this and figure it out.
Okay, my last question has to do with some of the conferences that have played in the fall and some have played in, going to be playing in the spring. So are you taking those conferences that maybe won their conference tournament or regular season in the fall to be the automatic qualifier, or do they have to still play off in the spring?
Well, the conference decides who gets the automatic qualifying bid for their league. So the Sun Belt and the Big 12 have already determined who their automatic qualifier will be. So technically we've gone from 30 down to 28. We're on our way. So we do have 28 more leagues to determine, but the ones that played in the fall that have determined their champion, that will represent their teams into the championship. Now, there were 2 other leagues, the ACC and the SEC, who played meaningful matches, meaning they played a good piece of their conference schedule this past fall. And all of those matches count toward the results that would be considerable for tournament evaluation. So if anybody was playing this fall, that counted toward their record and will be part of the committee's review for the teams playing in the spring championship.
Okay. Well, I know Brian has a bunch of questions that kind of go into more specifics that hopefully you'll be able to to shed some light on. So Brian, why don't you go ahead and ask TJ?
Yes, first of all, I just want to thank you. 4 years on this committee and chairing it in the most difficult year is all coaches. We would all like to tell you how much we appreciate your tireless efforts and to promote the game and how difficult this year must be for you. But I want from the four of us, thank you for doing this. My question has to do, you're welcome. My question has to do with the criteria for selection. I always, there's over 160 years of experience within the four of us. And when we got to the NCAA tournament, figuring out where we were going to be and what the criteria was going to be for selection. This year, it's so much different. There's so little out of conference playing. There's so little comparisons and travel, strength of schedule, home and away. It's almost all conference play. So right now, I've seen it where it's years that it's just RPI and then a little geographic mixed with the RPI. But to seed the 16 teams this year, what are you talking about? What do we need to look forward to? Or what do coaches need to plan to get ready for this tournament?
Well, this is not a simple or direct answer other than the criteria for evaluating teams for at-large bids has not changed. The Competition Oversight Committee has determined the criteria that has been used year after year, gets tweaked over time, but in general, it's the same criteria we've used for every selection that I've been a part of. The value has changed some. You mentioned RPI, and clearly RPI is meant to assign almost a quantitative value to a team's performance over its schedule, but it's driven a lot by non-conference competition, which we know is been largely minimized. There are teams playing outside their conference, but those that are generally playing in their neighborhoods for the same reason that some leagues aren't playing outside their conference at all. It's all to try to reduce exposure. So honestly, the committee's responsibilities and our tools to do our jobs have not changed. I will tell you that I work with an amazing group of people. This committee is really a committed group of folks who are really passionate about their feelings of volleyball. They enamor me with their depth of understanding. I think we have 5 former coaches on this committee, and not that their viewpoint means any more than someone who wasn't. In fact, I think through the breadth of the committee, we have a good range of people who see things to help us really do our jobs to the best of our ability. We also rely heavily on the regional advisory committees, and that's a system where each conference has a representative distributed among 5 regions of the country who help evaluate the teams in that region so that we get a different perspective and utilize what I think is a strong source of expertise on teams' performance, and that's coaches that are currently serving in that capacity now. They do a regional ranking that's for the committee's use only, that help us really see how each region is doing. And honestly, it's just going to be tough. I don't want to act like this is some simple mathematical formula that's just going to put out a result that everyone's going to agree with. They never agree, and that's okay. In all honesty, we just have to know that we've done this job to the best of our ability to identify the teams that have earned a place in the tournament. And that is still our responsibility moving forward. Just the best word that's been used to describe this so far is imperfect. There's a lot of things imperfect about this, but our approach and attitude is complete. We want to do this job to the best of our ability and make sure that the national association, the teams that are playing, can look at this and see the team that wins this really having been the best in the country under such unique circumstances.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly difficult. No, I don't think you can question the integrity of the committee. I just think it's an impossible task. We got more to complain about this year than ever before, right? And I just, wow, that's going to be interesting. I might turn my phone off the day after the selection. But I really appreciate this. And is there anything else you want to say about the selection process? Are we leaving anything out that I'm not asking you?
The message that I feel has been consistent from the committee is that every match counts. I think every team starts that thinking that. Honestly, it doesn't change this year. And unfortunately, I think it's just a heightened level of importance because the sample size is smaller. Normally teams play anywhere from 28 to 32 matches. I don't think anybody's going to hit that number this year. Plus not being able to play outside your conference and really demonstrate a team's ability in terms of national comparison, it's going to make it tough. I admit it feels daunting because there's no way to tell a team that thinks that they've done enough that the committee didn't see it that way. And it doesn't change that disappointment, but we have made our commitment in being a part of this committee and understanding how diligent our work needs to be, how complete our review has to be to figure out how to honor the teams that have earned the right to be in this tournament and play for that championship.
I'm going to turn it over to Ruth. She has some specific questions on the tournament itself. Ruth?
Wow, you guys, 2 weeks in a row, you've given me my allotted time. TJ, they always cut me out of my time, so I get to ask. One of the things, it's kind of threefold. One, fans, well, maybe four. Fans, tickets, TV, protocol. And I'm a fan, and I want to know, where do I go to get updates? Because even though we think everybody's on social media, and we assume everybody knows ncaa.org, or we assume they know to go to find out where the bracket is in the interactive bracket. But can you just specify, I'm a fan, what do I need to know?
The ncaa.org website is primary for information. I think a lot of the questions you're asking, Ruth, we just don't know yet.
Mhm.
I think 2 months to go until you actually open the doors for the championship and what capacities will be able to accept in the early rounds through the regionals and the national championship. It could change with each level.
Okay.
So unfortunately, I cannot be that specific at this point. Just like we don't know where the virus will be in a month in terms of its prevalence through the nation and what other measures may be going on. I know that a lot of this will be determined by the NCAA and their study on safeguards for the student athletes as well as for their fans capacity. And I can't be very specific at this point. They're going to do everything they can to make sure if fans want access, they can either see it, every team that's playing, or for the select few, I think it will be an opportunity to see in venue, but a lot of that's just not determined yet, I'm afraid.
Okay, that's okay. Hey, I didn't know if you had a crystal ball or not. You said we don't know where the virus is going to be in a month. I don't know where it's going to be today. So you know more than I do. Okay, so tickets and that really go to ncaa.org and get that. And the TV will be announced there also. Will it be a major network? Will it be internet? Is that something that the committee is involved in, or the best place to go is the website?
Well, we have engaged TV,
Okay.
certainly with this change in format and the fact that if we're not able to open our doors at 100% to accept all fans who would want to watch, we want to make sure that people have a chance to see their favorite players, or especially mom and dads who might have a hard time traveling. We want to make sure that that's available. And TV has certainly come to us with some great ideas with what can be done in the preliminary rounds, through the regionals, through the national championship. Obviously want to make it as accessible as possible, given the fact that there will be restrictions. Things won't resolve themselves that quickly. There will definitely be a reduced percentage of capacity in each of the facilities as we move into this.
Okay, that's perfect. You know, it's interesting. They give me time to talk, but then they chat with me and say they got more questions. Isn't that so? Guess what? I'm going to go to Mick because he always does a wonderful job introducing, and then he remembers by the time he listens to everybody, he's got more questions. So Mick, here's your time.
Well, I have two things right off the top of my head, and I've written down a couple of others, but The first one I have is we have an opportunity here, TJ, for a vaccine ticket. If we're vaccinating everybody 65 and older, maybe we could fill that place up with senior citizens. I don't know. Has there been any thought about if you have your vaccine, you ought to be able to get in there and watch?
Well, to be honest, Mick, I think that there's watching the men's and women's basketball tournament come together. I think they're going to be the runway to help us see what we're going to be able to do to a degree. Obviously, the NCAA really depends on those championships, and I think they're going to look very closely at every opportunity they have. So some of this will be defined for us as we start moving forward through that.
So I did research on the NCAA websites for information, and you did an interview maybe a couple weeks ago, maybe earlier than that, with some NCAA people. And the information you gave there was not up on the website yet. And the information you've given today, which has been spectacular. I mean, I can see why you're the chairperson. Everybody on that committee wants TJ to be the chairperson because you articulate the situation perfectly. No one could find fault at all with this delivery. It is perfect for the coaches for sure, because as a coach, I'd want to hear it exactly the way you're putting it out here. And so I just think we need to get it up on the websites, though, if you can, or you can take that message back, because I know people are searching, trying to figure this out, as you guys are. And they'll want to know as soon as you know. But with the big push for vaccines, it will be interesting to see if that's an issue. One last thing that I found very interesting: there are two conferences, and you identified them, that are not playing in the fall. I asked a coach of one of those conferences if they could play an independent schedule and be considered for the tournament, and the coach said that coach didn't know, but the conference had told the coach that they could not, that they had to stick together and support each other. How does the committee deal with something like that? It would seem like if a school wanted to play an independent schedule, that if the school okayed it, they should be allowed to do that, and they should be in consideration for the tournament. Do you have any thoughts about that at all?
Well, the decision of the two leagues not to award their AQ based on whatever conditions they evaluated to think that was the best way for them to proceed, that was clearly their decision. If a team within that league decides to play an independent schedule, I don't think it would preclude them from consideration. I think we thought about that briefly and said if somebody did play and successfully schedule the minimum threshold of matches, would they be eligible for an AQ? I don't know how we could tell them they're not.
I agree.
Just given the circumstances, if they can play a minimum number of matches, they would certainly be willing to be considered by the committee, given all the other extraordinary things we're dealing with.
Well, thank you. Ruth, that really answers. And usually I don't get where I run out of questions. People answer my questions so well, so I'm stymied here. You've done
TJ,
great.
I got another one. I'm not sure.
No. Hey, we're ready. We're out of time now, Bob.
What happens if you have one conference?
Come on, you guys, you got to keep that next week. We got to have TJ back
Bob,
on.
you're lucky. She didn't mute you. She just told you to be quiet.
That's exactly. TJ, thank you for coming on, and we really appreciate it. And we are ready to move on to our marketing. And TJ, if you got to go back and get more decisions, or maybe you're going to go back. I know you got a haircut, so you don't need to go and get that haircut. All righty. Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Book your MasterCoaches custom virtual clinic today by heading over to our Instagram and click on our bio and click on the virtual clinic link. If you'd like to be on our guest list for the Buzz Reaction After Show, please click on the link in our Instagram account, Want to Be a Coach, and Want to Be a Guest and a Coach together, and you will receive our updates. Your name will be on our guest appearance list. Our Wednesday weekly Buzz shows are on YouTube, and you can follow us on Instagram. Follow us on Facebook, Volleyball Master Coaches, Instagram and Twitter, VB Master Coaches. A special shout out to our partners, SNA Sports and Baden Sports, and thanks to our content providers, NFHS, JVA, Coaches Insider, and AVCA. Stay on Facebook Live after John closes our show today and join our Master Coaches Buzz Reaction to not only hear Master Coaches conversation on today's show, but also to hear from two of our guests. Now let's go to Buzz and Buzz Reaction digital partner, Dr. John Foreman, who will update us on his most recent podcast. John.
Hi, thanks, Ruth. This reaction is going to be interesting. I can tell already. In the meanwhile, friend of the show, Beth Lanier, I sat down with her yesterday to talk again a little bit more depth about her book, Stop Competing and Start Winning. So that's going to be the next episode of the podcast that will go up on Sunday. So you can get that at coachingvb.com. It'll be up on YouTube. You can also see it on social media feeds. So feel free to check it out and anything else, and love to hear what people have to say. So with that, we'll roll into the buzz, and I'm seeing one guest in twice.
Yeah,
Okay.
I guess he wants to.
We'll get it sorted out.
He's pushing it to all those Central American companies.
There you go.
All right, welcome to the Buzz Reaction. And today we'll be having two guests come on in the last 15 minutes as part of our Wanna Be a Guest program, which we will introduce them later in the show. Now, let's hear from our master coaches, Mick, Bob, and Brian, on their thoughts on today's Buzz Show. But guess who we're going to first? Bob.
Thank you, Ruth.
Yay.
Because, you guys are spending so much time being nice to TJ, we weren't getting any of the answers. I mean, you spent more time complimenting him. I mean, what if you're at a conference, you're a mid-major, all right, you're not playing any interconference games, all right, you end up being second place and you have a 20-3 record, all right, and you're going to watch the Big Ten get 8 teams in. How are you going to feel about that? There's no objectivity to how we're going to select teams. I mean, I wanted to hear TJ say, "Hey, this is how we're going to do it." All right,
because you didn't ask that question.
Well, I was trying to.
Where were you, Bob?
You asked 6 and you never got to that one.
Bob,
Well,
we're
that
waiting.
was not supposed to be my question, but
We're waiting for you, Bob.
We're just telling him what a great job he was doing.
I was zonking off here.
That was wonderful. Now you know why I didn't ask you, because I knew how long it was going to go.
Bob, I actually think he did answer that in the same way they've always answered that.
Yeah.
And that is, they're going to use all this criteria that they always use. And my feeling is very often that is used as a justification and not as it's not consistently. If you use RPI for one team and then you use strength of schedule for another team, or home or whatever, but it is. I've always been concerned about a justification of what they do. Now this year, as he said, I believe in the integrity of the group, but I also believe it's difficult. And this year it's even going to be worse. My limited understanding of RPI, and I worked on years to try to understand that, is there's a possibility that a conference like the Big 12 or something, or Big 10, could all play 500, and their RPI high enough to all of them get into the tournament. 6 or 8 of them get in as at large by playing 500 ball, all within the same conference, especially if one team plays a match out of the conference and wins. So it is going to be a really impossible scenario to seed the teams and to pick the teams. But I did think he answered, and he said, we're going to do the same thing we've always done. But I think that he said, given the scenario, it's even going to be harder.
Well, remember earlier, we had the ACC coaches on, and Boston College in particular, with 8 or 9 freshmen, got stuck in a pod. You remember they did 3 pods in the fall, and they played a third of their schedule within the pods. And Boston College got stuck with Notre Dame, Louisville, Syracuse, and Pitt. And they ended up 0-8. They have to carry 0-8 into the spring season now. They may have improved enough to play. they could maybe go undefeated in the spring and still not make it into the tournament just because they got thrown into that early pod. And would the committee give them any consideration? You know, that's a really interesting thing from that standpoint. And then I think yesterday, one of you, oh no, it was somebody else, pointed out that Coastal Carolina was so good all year in the Sun Belt, only to lose their star left side or left-handed attacker to an ACL in the championship match against Texas State. Texas State is now representing the Sun Belt, a very, very good team. But Coastal Carolina should have received consideration, might still receive consideration, even though that left-hander is not going to be able to play. So there are a lot of questions out there that the committee is going to have to deal with that we couldn't really get into because they would just say, we're not talking about it until we have the information, right? Ruth, before we go to our friends at the end, though, I'd like to throw in a very quick commercial for next week's show, because we have the whole coaching staff of Cal State Fullerton coming on to talk about a new concept that's happening finally to volleyball. It's been going on in baseball, softball, women's basketball, men's basketball, and football, where coaches are coaching coaches. And what I mean by that is schools and coaches are bringing in consultants to help them improve what they're doing, how well they're doing it. Sometimes athletic directors are paying consultants to come in and unstick, if I can use that term, unstick coaches who they want to keep in their programs. They don't want those coaches to leave, but the coaches aren't winning right now, and trying to get them out of whatever is causing them not to be successful. So we have a whole coaching staff coming on next week, and I'm really excited because I think that's a new concept that should be out there. And at least 3 of our coaches here on the Master Coaches have been consultants for teams and individuals. So that's a commercial for next week. But I want people to know that they're coming on. Ashley Preston, the head coach, is bringing your entire staff. So we have a chance to really grill Ashley next week, and she's a talker. So we ought to hear a lot here.
Okay, Mick, that's great, because we can still talk about today's show, but I also want to just say, I think a lot of times coaches, it can be an experienced coach, or it can be a first-year coach or a second-year coach. I think there are people like us out there that really aren't intimidating. We're very accommodating, and we're there not to say that you're doing it right or wrong. We're there to help you become better at what you do because of all the experiences of all of us. So I know sometimes it's intimidating to try to think about asking somebody, but hey, we're not in the coaching ranks except for Bob, and he's in men's, and hey, he can bring a different perspective too, because of all those years he's been, coaching women's. But
yeah, he's not underwater, he's under snow.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Well, I got a question for Brian and Mick. You guys have gone through the whole tournament a number of times, from start to all the way to finish to the championship. When I hear TJ talk about 2 weeks out of school, now I realize that, everybody's, not everyone, but a lot of the courses are virtual right now, so that helps. But what do you think of the impact on the student athlete, that would have to be 2.5 weeks completely, sequestered in Omaha, Nebraska?
Brian, you want me to start? You want to
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, from my standpoint, I'd love to quarantine my team for the tournament. I've always thought we've always had finals. We've always had travel. We've always had all of these things, and parents that all want to get involved at all the wrong times. I mean, they all mean well, but it's always takes away from the focus of the tournament. You have to be on guard for 3 straight weeks with your team to keep them focused for the next game. So if we could be all in one place, that wouldn't be a bad thing from my standpoint at all. It takes out the travel. It means you can work with the rehab of any small injuries you have. You've got everybody available to work on game plans for the next opponents. and that sort of thing. I like all of that. I think that's maybe not so bad because teams have been training all year to have a chance to win the championship. So from my standpoint, that part I like. I'll speak to some other things, but I want to give Brian some time here to jump in.
As a coach, I couldn't wait to go to the garden spot of Omaha, Nebraska for 2 weeks. Spend my 2 weeks there. Now, I think, well, first of all, there's after the first weekend, there's only going to be 16 teams. But I really dislike missing school. I just always disliked it. I didn't like it. And there's going to be 16 teams that are there for 2 weeks. And that's difficult. It is different this year because almost everything is virtual anyway. But most schools can't afford to bring professors or tutors or whatever on the trip. So it's an academic burden. As a coach, I used to schedule as least amount of time away from school as possible. And I always thought it should be an NCAA rule, not the number of matches you played, but the number of days you were away from school. I think what difference does it make matches? I just think the number of days you're away from your instruction is the negative. So I don't like it, but I do believe in this format given the conditions of COVID.
So what I would add in addition to that is what I want to know as a coach is what time are the matches? So we talked a little bit about this Monday, but let me reiterate on the air. If we've got those number of matches that Brian was talking about, we've got 16 matches the first day, we got 16 matches the second day, we get it down to 16 teams. That means 8 matches for the next weekend. We've got 1 arena. If we play 4 matches a day in that arena, we have to have 4 matches somewhere else in the regionals to be able to get down to the number of teams
Right.
for the semifinals and finals. The first day, you're going to have maybe 6 courts or at least 4 courts where you have 2 matches on each court or 4 matches on each court. So you're talking about playing at 9 o'clock in the morning, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and maybe 6 o'clock or something like that, because you need 3 hours minimum if those matches go 5 games. So you're looking at, they have to have 3 or 4 other courts. And then how do you get spectators into 4 different courts? We never got to the issue of 18,000 tickets have been sold for this event, and they have not been given their money back. We're just sitting waiting for that. So those people want to see, could you bring in 4,000 for one match in this place, 4,000 for another match over here on the side of the arena, almost like a junior qualifier. When you think about it, that could show up also. And then how do you schedule those matches? Who gets priority in the playing facility with 20,000 seats? Who's out on the sport courts in the arena? Those are all questions I want to know as a coach. And then I got to figure out how to get my team up early enough to be awake for the match, or how I take care of the whole day if I'm playing the last match at night. Those are all issues that come to my mind.
Yep.
right,
We had
you
a
know what?
question. We had a question come in from Facebook. If we can answer that, this is a real quick one. Have you guys heard any indication on dead period? What's going to happen with that?
No, not heard anything.
I heard that it was going to be not extended as a dead period, but extended as a quiet period.
Okay.
So you're possibly
didn't hear
allow
that.
people on campus, but you're not going to be able to go out and watch kids.
I heard it was going to be extended, but I didn't hear it like you did. You have better information than I do.
Well, maybe they're going to make it one for women and one for men, Bob. Maybe the men are going to get to be able to get out there and do that.
Mick,
You know-
I thought your best question, Mick, today was trying to get us old people into the tournament.
Yeah, did you like that? Nobody.
I thought it was
that. I thought we should have had all kinds of call-ins saying, "All right, yes." Show your
You're
birth
gonna be
certificate,
you're gonna
your
be a
vaccination.
hero in Lincoln, Nebraska. I'll tell you, or Omaha. You're gonna be you're going to be a star, you know,
Okay,
given the
so-
age they're fans.
So Bob, you said that what those two guys have done in the last years and 32 teams. How about the 9 years on AIW? You know, I'm going to bring it up. When we had 36, sometimes 48 teams in one weekend in one place.
Yeah.
And you played sometimes 2 to 3 matches in one day. And I don't remember ever that many injuries that we had during those 9 years. Everybody forgets about the 70s, but hey, we're back to the 70s now.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, there could be some of that, but I thought bringing them to one place is the right call, first of all, because that's the fairest thing to do for the most part. Picking someplace in the middle of the country is somewhat fair, because the farthest edges of the country are what you're always concerned with. If you were in Seattle and you had to go to Florida, your kids died. It used to be in the old, when Soviets, so back in the Soviet period, when they studied sport, they said 1 day rest for every time zone that you had to leave. And they could prove that with research. And we're taking our kids sometimes 5 and 6 hours from Hawaii. I had to go from Hawaii to San Antonio, which was a 6-hour time zone change, and play within 4 days, and study and take finals while we were playing. So it's a pretty interesting thing. Ruth mentions, yeah, we used to play 6 matches in a weekend for a championship, or 4 matches at least, 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. So
Okay,
Friday,
gentlemen and ladies, let's bring in our guests today to join in our new format, which allows our guests to be on the Buzz Reaction Show for 10 minutes after Master Coach's conversation of our earlier Buzz Show. Each guest gets to ask a question that they've always wanted to ask, or they might have been afraid to ask, or they just want an opinion on a topic or a situation. First, okay, do we have Marco and Noelia on?
Yeah, they're
Well,
here.
Marco's been there for the whole time. He hasn't
All
moved.
right. All right, Bob. First, we have Marco Garcia, owner of Spartan Volleyball, Tijuana, Mexico, and host of Todos
Nice
Somos Volleyball,
pronunciation.
TSV talk show, and recipient of the recent AVCA NSCA scholarship for AVCA Virtual Convention. Next, we have Noelia Noirgean, owner of Club Gimnasia and Esgrima in Santa Fe, Argentina, and co-host of Todos Somos Volleyball TSV talk show, and also a recipient of the recent AVCA NSCA scholarship for the AVCA convention. Welcome, Noelia and Marco, and congratulations to both of you on receiving the AVCA NSCA scholarship.
Thank you so much.
Welcome. All right, now.
Hi, Ruth. Hi, John. Hi, Mike. Hi, Bob. Hi, Brian.
All
Hi,
right.
Marco. How are
Muy
you
bien,
doing?
señora. But before you before you ask your secret questions, we would love to know how you will be sharing your experience and knowledge that you both gained during the AVCA convention. Let's first go to Noelia, and Marco may assist in translating if needing. It's not because the guy needs to talk all the time, it's just that he might be helping translate. Some of our viewers don't speak Spanish. All right, Noelia.
Bueno, en realidad, desde que empezó el día 1 de la convención, ya lo trasladé a mis prácticas, porque en realidad acá en Argentina arrancamos en el mes de octubre, ya con burbujas, los entrenamientos, así que bueno, logré aplicarlos, los conceptos que iba tomando de las convenciones, los pude plasmar en algunos entrenamientos que estábamos teniendo, y así también aparte hablamos mucho con mis compañeros del club, mis compañeros, mis entrenadores, así que nos sigue sirviendo muchísimo el tema de la convención. Marcos, ¿vos se lo traducís?
Hey,
Good luck, Marco.
Yeah.
it's gonna be a challenge, but I'm gonna try.
Entiendo,
No.
pero todavía no
No,
hablo
sí.
bien el inglés.
Okay, she says it doesn't, he can hear it, he can understand it, but she can't speak it, so. Well, in a nutshell, they said that this is the first day of the convention. She started practicing with, since October 20th. Yeah, they started practicing, well, since.
Oh, yeah, no. All right, here we go.
Practicing right now in bubbles and doing that with, if they finish with someone, they do it again, right? Different teams comes in, and she's sharing it with his fellow coaches there in Santa Fe. So
Okay.
pretty much that's it.
Excellent. Okay, Marco, how about you? I know that you're going to say it shorter than she did, huh?
Well, it is in the same tenor. Try to disseminate that information with my fellow coaches here in Mexico, with the new association coaches here in Mexico. It's very important to disseminate and create a culture of learning.
Okay.
It's very important to create a culture of learning.
Okay, excellent. All right, now here we go. The secret question that each of you have for Master Coaches. And Marco, we're going to you first. And guess what? Bob, you're going to answer first because you're on my list today. Okay, Marco, what's your question?
Okay, Coach Bob. Well, the thing is that what is to share experiences with other coaches with different views. Well, the thing is that what is the key to build a culture players, not only for the game, but in life?
Okay.
Well,
Yeah, Bob.
yeah, that's a
Bob.
tough question, Marco. I think when you talk about culture, there's a lot that goes into that. And I think it's important, especially when you're starting a new program, like I did, just 2 years ago here at Sacred Heart. It requires, leadership from the coach and being clear and concise about what your expectations are and what the program's all about. All right. And then you have to have buy-in by some of the key players in that group. Otherwise you're in for a fight for a while until you can convince them that, the characteristics you're looking for and the qualities that your program are going to be about are believed by those key players. And once they buy in, then it becomes a continuing thing from year to year. And you have to have the older players teaching the younger players and kind of giving that information to them.
Okay. All right, Brian. Noela, comprende? Okay, Brian.
Marco, there was a second component there. The second part of your question was about how do you carry that over to life, in life?
Yes.
Okay. I've met a few coaches in my life that I've watched them and you might not like what they said, but you never can question their integrity. So you might not like to hear it, but you couldn't argue with it. There was no argument. And so if people can stay in a position of integrity in the decisions they make, I think it's heard, and it's heard. My answer was that I always, my kids were always around. My kids were always around the gym, or I wanted to feel like they were. So every decision I made was, I want my kids to be proud of what I did, what I would do. And that is seen. So, and it's seen by players, and it's seen by parents, and it's seen by other coaches and by community members. So you develop if this is how you live, and you must be consistent with it. And so other people see you and hear, and they adopt it. They understand it. And that's how you can make a difference in kids' lives and your own kids and the players that you work with. And it's hard to stay there. It's not always easy to take those positions as the head coach, but you always have to do it. You always have to
Okay,
stay.
Mick, we got to
know,
go to you because
straightforward,
Noella
exact.
still needs to ask her question.
Yeah, I'll be
Okay.
real quick. I think I totally agree with Bob and Brian. I just say it differently. I treat my team as if it's my neighborhood or my community. It's a way I feel like everything you do with your team, you do in your neighborhood, you do in your community, because that's the way you function. That's the way we live. And all the things we teach in our team things should enhance the community. When the kids go back to the community, they should bring the same things back to the community. So yes, that's a short.
Okay, super. Noelia, your question, your secret question.
Ah. ¿Qué piensan sobre el juego en general de Argentina? Si estarían sacando algo o si nos harían hincapié en algo de lo que ustedes piensan, de lo que ustedes creen.
Okay.
I love it.
The question is what do you think about the general game of Argentina, and would you modify something about something of the game?
One more time
I
on that,
didn't-
Marco.
Well,
Yeah.
if you could modify something of the game they're playing right now with Argentina.
How would we modify the game? Okay,
Yes.
who wants to go? Mick, let's have you go since you went last.
I'm not sure I understand the question. How would I modify the game for what? How would I
actually,
change the game?
the game they play right now, the style game of Argentina, if you change something about it, or have you seen it, like what would you change in your opinion?
Well, the game is played in the United States. I would reduce the substitutions. So that's what I would do, but I would reduce them only to 8. That would be one thing, because I want the best players in the world to want to play our game. And right now, if a star athlete who's playing 5 sports comes to our gym and that athlete can't pass right away, usually coaches take that athlete out to improve performance to get a better passer or defensive person in the back row. And I think that limits us from being the best game in the world. So that's one thing that I would change.
Okay, Bob?
Okay.
Well, I don't know if I've understood the question completely, but I thought what was being asked was looking at the Argentinian game, what would you do to modify that game? Well, I personally think the Argentinian brand of volleyball is a very good brand of volleyball. I don't have as much experience as Mick has internationally, but the experience I do have, Argentina plays a very good brand of volleyball. My question is what's being done at the highest levels, is that filtering down to all the volleyball in Argentina? Because the top national team is one of the top teams in the world, and in different times is more than competitive. But is that filtering down to all the other clubs, in Argentina? I think that's one of the things that's happening better and more often in the United States right now than some other countries, where it becomes the top level is very good, but the mass is missing something. And I don't know
Okay,
if that
Brian.
helps.
How would you define, I have a question, and it's how would you define Argentinian volleyball, the style? What's the style of Argentinian volleyball for the women?
Marco?
¿Cuál es el estilo del juego de las chicas de Argentina? No?
El estilo es, bueno, no sé a qué se refiere básicamente, pero es llegar a primer nivel, a nivel 1. La mayoría es tratar de buscar ligas para obviamente llegar a la selección y más adelante obviamente ir a diferentes países.
Well, she says that, the prime directive is to go to top teams and go to the Olympic team and go, leagues there and local leagues there, they have major leagues, and then go to the Europe or teams, top-notch teams in other countries.
But what is lacking? I understand that, but what's the style? The question is about style. What, if you looked at Argentinian volleyball, what would it look like? Does it look like Cuban volleyball, Colombian volleyball, Puerto Rican volleyball? What
Sí,
is
que-
it look like?
Básicamente, si le gusta el estilo de voleibol argentino a comparación de ellos.
Ok, pero ¿qué estilo crees tú que se asemeja más al brasileño?
Y nosotros nos asimilamos mucho al brasilero. Lo que pasa es que el brasilero tiene un mix de varias cosas, pero
Okay,
nos asemejamos mucho al brasilero.
well, Brazilian style of playing because Brazil has a lot of styles mixed into one.
Okay,
Okay.
so it's similar to that. My answer to you quickly, Ruth, I know you know we're out of time, is that to develop your own style, influence, so that when we look at Argentina, we say it's not Brazilian, it's not Cuban, it's Argentinian. And my offer is that I would love to, with master coaches, come to Argentina and help you develop your own style. We come and do a clinic, the four of us. I've never been to Argentina and I want to go. I want to learn how to dance, you know, and so I have to.
Okay,
I
want
yeah,
to
hey,
dance.
try and
Tiempo al
dance.
tiempo, tiempo al tiempo.
Yeah, there you go.
ladies and
The
gentlemen.
tango, the
Well,
tango, I have to
our
learn.
time is up.
Tango.
Ruth,
Yeah.
Ruth, before you close, we have to get John Foreman one of these beautiful Ren polos that we're wearing, Master Coaches
Oh,
polos
yes.
that we're wearing. So
We will definitely
put that
get
on
him
your
that.
bucket list, okay?
Okay, all right, well, we're out of time, and thanks Noelia and Marco for joining us on today's Buzz Reaction Show. Wishing you both great success as you safely go into your junior club seasons. We are excited to know that coaches still want to be life learners. Now, we are ready to go. For those viewers that want to be on the Buzz Reaction guest list, jump over to our VB Master Coaches Instagram, go to the bio and click on the sign up to be a guest on our list. Be sure to tell your friends about our weekly Buzz News show. And thanks for joining us today, and see you on the Buzz.